So we all know that college students are the richest people in the world, right? I'm just joking. But we do know that thousands of students across the country are suffering from crippling student loan debt. I myself am one of them. I went into debt after a 1 year at OSU when I was 20. That was 5 years ago, and I still owe $10,000 on my loan. So that's sort of crazy, and that's a personal experience that I've had that has sort of prompted me to be so passionate about this. We can save student lives by lowering student loans, and today I want to talk about how different things were between the 1960s and today, and how so much has changed, but we still don't have enough money to cover the student loans that we're being expected to pay. So, as we know, things weren't exactly the same in the 1960s as they were today. Mostly, that's positive. But in this case, tuition went from $10,060 in the 1960s to $23,835 today. Thank you to AmericanProgress.org for giving me these numbers. But that is a 326% increase. That's insane. That is so much money. Imagine you go to school and you have a class that costs $10. And you're like, yeah, great, I can do this. The next year, you go back to school and that same class costs $36.50. But you're making the same amount of money. That's not really fair. Part-time jobs don't generally cover the student loan costs, and especially since it's increased, we haven't really adjusted our income to cover these student loans. And I'm going to talk about that next, actually. Our minimum wage in 1968 was $10.18, the equivalent of $10.18 for inflation. Today, in 2021, it is $7.25. And it has been $7.25 all the way since 2009. That is over 10 years that it has stayed the same. So what has happened since 2009? In 2009, between 2009 and a study done in 2018, tuition costs have went up over $5,000, all while minimum wage is staying the same. $5,000. What else has happened? Well, rent in 2009 was an average of $1,010. What was the average of rent in 2018? $1,164. That's over $150 that has went up since the minimum wage has increased. So students are being expected to pay for their cost of living, work jobs, and pay for their student loans. That's insane. On our people that we interviewed over at COTC, our little questions, every single student told me that they could not pay for both college and cost of living out of pocket with their current salary. That means that they can't afford to live and pay for their student loans at the same time. That's atrocious. That's horrible. That shouldn't be a problem that we're experiencing. We should be able to move out of our parents' house, work part-time, and pay for our student loans all at the same time. But no one can do that. And all of the students I asked talked about, oh, well, I live with my parents, so thankfully I don't have to pay for the cost of living. But I'm 25 and I just moved out of my parents' house. And I can solely do that because my boyfriend, who is not in college and didn't go to college, makes good enough money that we could move out. I, on my own, could not leave my parents' house because of my student debt. Accumulated from a year of college 5 years ago. That's not ideal. So they also all agreed that student debt should be lowered. And so that's coming from real college students. That's coming from people who are experiencing it actively right now. So I just want to wrap this up and say that students across the country are suffering and that we are crying out for help. We just want to live and be free to, live on our own and do things and not be burdened by our student debt. I'm not saying that we need to, abolish student debt completely. I'm fine with college costing a certain amount of money, but it needs to be lowered. It needs to be manageable. And I know that we're just a bunch of silly kids in our 20s, but we can invoke this change, guys. We can fight for this. This is something that we can do. So I just want to wrap it up by saying we can save student lives by lowering student loans. And I want to give a couple shout outs to usafacts.org and cbpp.org for giving me some of the information that I talked about today. If you have any questions about my studies or anything like that, please feel free to reach out for me. And thank you guys so much for listening to my speech.